Life is all about relationships. Lovers, family, body, or money. How satisfied you are can be completely explained by how you relate to things around you. This is Sophie Jaffe, and together with my husband, Dr. Adi Jaffe, we are here to explore and teach you how to maximize your relationships and achieve a happier life. Let's get ignited.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe, and
I'm Sophie Jaffe.
Sophie's back. Like
sort of.
80%?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably about that.
If Sophie's raspy voice is making you wonder, last week, you remember I came on and Sophie was not quite ready to talk, and she is now... she's back. You're like, I feel like the voice is the last thing.
Yeah,
that
it's
you
just
have.
kind of lingering. I had the flu. Baby Noah and I both have the flu, and it's been really gnarly. It's been really hard to be in this state when I want to do so many things, and it just keeps lingering. Like I'm used to I should be done. I should be over this by now, and I'm just not. So it's definitely a practice in patience, and it's also acknowledgement of just like healing takes many layers and many levels, and you can't control it.
Yeah, and you're not one to love sitting around.
No, not at all. Like I love to be mellow and chill, but also I like to be accomplished and get a lot done and do a million things, and I have a lot of energy normally, so it's pretty frustrating.
Yeah, seeing you and Noah sick at the same time is tough because, obviously a baby can't do anything about being sick.
It's just heartbreaking to see Noah sick. Like I don't even care about myself, but seeing Noah sick breaks my heart, her little body. And I realized today that she's lost a bunch of weight because she has no appetite, and this one specific outfit she's wearing today was too small for her 2 weeks ago, and now it's like a little baggy. It's like she's losing some of her little baby curves, and she'll get it all back immediately because her appetite will return, but it's so sad to see a baby lose weight. She's like on a Coachella cleanse.
Coachella cleanse? What's a Coachella cleanse?
I'm kidding. It's like people that go to Coachella, like they cleanse before they go to Coachella. Oh. She just did a baby version of Coachella cleanse. Bad joke.
Hashtag Coachella cleanse. Well, I'm glad to have you back. It was really weird to record an intro without you last week.
I bet.
So now you're here.
Here I am.
Here you are.
We have an amazing guest today. Amazing.
I'm going to read our fan of the week. What did you say you wanted me to call? Review of the week.
Yeah.
You didn't like the fan of the week moniker. Review of the week. Yeah. This one comes with emojis from AW Stub, and the title is Dynamic Duo with stars on both sides. I can honestly say that this is my most listened to podcast, and I'm a podcast junkie. You know, junkie is a very stigmatizing word in the addiction world. Sophie and Adi are the perfect balance together and bring amazing resources. Adi is full of logical, applicable intelligence and healthy skepticism, while Sophie floats like a butterfly but stings like a bee. I like this review. I feel like we should have this person writing for us.
Yeah.
She is intuitive, dreamy, and tuned in, but also takes no prisoners. That's why I married her. Their honesty and accessibility to their listeners is really unheard of. As they gain more popularity, they continue to really be there for their followers. I speak from firsthand experience. DMs answered about motherhood and relationship issues from Sophie within hours. I think you two are doing incredible things in the world, and I'm beyond grateful to have this resource. Much love.
Awesome. What a beautiful review.
I know. We get some really amazing ones. Among the ones who say I talk too much.
We taught a workshop last weekend, Rochelle and I, 2 days ago, and it was beautiful, and it was amazing that like 3/4 of the room listens to our podcast.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
and
so cool.
they kept referencing it. So we'd be going around the circle and talking about things, and they're like, well, like in Sophie and Adi, like as they say in their podcast, and it was just like overwhelming how much support. And they were like, yeah, well, ever since I started listening to their podcast, I just am being more honest, radically transparent. And I forgot to tell you because I've been so sick ever since. I haven't been able to download any of the retreat, but we did a beautiful Nourish Your Soul kind of like an Ignited Women version. And Rochelle and I have taught this internationally several times, and we're trying to bring more local small events because I have 3 children. It's not easy to drop everything and go to Mexico on a whim. So we did a little drop in and had it 2 days ago in Venice, and it was so beautiful.
So cool.
And the reviews just, even there were 2 men that came to it, and normally it's always women, and they were just so supportive, so amazing. And one girl was reading your book and one woman, and just blown away by the response and the work that we're doing in the world. And I told them the story about the night that I smoked too much weed.
And you're like, are we being too honest?
I was sharing at the retreat how I took 3 hits of weed and how I started getting really paranoid. I felt like I was tripping out, and that I told Adi, like, maybe we're being too honest. Maybe we need to just stop everything, stop the podcast, I'm going to close down my Instagram.
I stood up for you guys. I defended hardcore our need to continue.
Yeah, I just was tripping out and just feeling really beyond vulnerability hangover. It was like I was tripping out and so afraid, and just felt like, oh my God, what are we doing? Putting ourselves out there so much. And Adi just kept reminding me that I was stoned, and I kept being like, that's annoying. Stop telling me that. And we went back and forth. But the bottom line is just that going to an event like this, where I meet people in real time and I'm making a huge difference in their lives, and we are making a huge impact in the way that they live their lives and live their relationships. I mean, that's huge. That's everything. And that reminded me why we do this.
So I don't know if you remember, but that night what you said was one of the things was, well, what if our kids hear it? What if parents in our kids' school hear it? And by the way, guaranteed right now, there are parents in our kids' school listening to this.
Yeah, they signed up for our thing last weekend. There was one of my favorite moms was at the event, and she was blown away by the event. And it, who cares?
Well, I think it goes one level beyond who cares. If we start not talking about things, then we say to people, well, everything else, transparency, that's fine, because you shouldn't feel shame about those things. But these things you shouldn't talk about because those really are too bad.
Right. Or hide those things.
That destroys the entire concept of radical transparency, because I want us to figure out, even live, even on recording, I want us to figure out where the dark spots are for us. Because by figuring that out, it's not like other people are necessarily experiencing exactly the same thing we are, but they get the message that it is okay to figure out your own dark spots,
right?
So that you can go fix them and go address them and go be honest about them and live your best life, not our best life.
Right.
You go live yours.
Your version of you.
Because we're allowing ourselves to do it. And yes, vulnerability, hangovers, fears about what people might say.
It's never easy. Anytime, you and I did the workshops 2 weeks ago, and then I did this one this past weekend. And I mean, when you leave an experience like that, where for 3 hours, 6 hours, you talk about things that are actually really valuable and
deep
and light you up, but also you talk about your darknesses and your weaknesses and the places in your life where there's dark corners. I mean, when you go into that deep place, it makes you feel a lot. And then after you feel a lot, you feel a little hungover from it. And it's just so important to then allow space for yourself to feel all of that and then recover from it and give yourself space and time. Don't just jump right back into real life.
And that's what we realize we're bad at, is we'll just jump back into everything. We'll fill the weekend.
That's why I got sick.
With workshops to help more people, but then we don't give ourselves a break.
No, you have to give space to actually then dig into the work.
Totally. There's an analogy that I gave at the Seattle workshop. I'm asking Maddie to write it down because I don't want to share it now. It'll be good for our next intro because of the person, but it was the one about not cleaning up behind yourself in the house of your life, remember? And I think a lot of people have so many dark spots, so many areas of their life they don't talk about, that they don't even know where to live publicly anymore. And they just have created this entire fake persona that is who they think everybody else wants them to be.
Yeah, it's funny because we're the opposite now. Now it's like we've created 90% of our life is out in the open in public. So when we have those areas that aren't, they're so shiny and bright to us that we're like,
what do we do with this?
What do we do with this information? Yeah.
Totally. And I think that actually leads really well to the guest we have here today, because I mean, when I met LaRayia, I'd never heard of her until a friend of ours, Tamara, actually told us about her because she was there shooting one afternoon. And
it's through our Mind, Body, Green world.
Yeah, through the Mind, Body, Green world. And when I came in, it was a little shocking because she had like 4 people with her, and they were on their way to feed. So it was a little overwhelming, to be honest, when I first met her. And then when we sat down and we started talking, it was like, I don't know if you felt the same thing, but I felt like there was this triangle, and I was just like in a tractor beam. Like I was wholly focused on everything we were talking about. This woman is like an angel, y'all. I mean,
she's an angel.
It's sitting in a room with her.
She's a real life angel.
And I don't even want to give away 80% of the stuff that she talks about. Like, this woman lives service in a way that you can't fathom. Like, you just can't understand it.
Well, and luckily, like, she doesn't let you go off the hook. Like, with what that review said about me, like, she's the same way. She will not let you off the hook.
Yeah.
Do your job. Do your part.
Yeah.
That is her message. It's not about even what she's doing. She's like, I don't care about what I'm like. I need you to go out there and do what you can do in your community. Yeah. And what can you do today? Yeah.
And it's beautiful. And I know that for a lot of you listening right now, there are areas of your life that you feel like you're just not firing on all cylinders. You're not doing your best. You're not proud of those areas of your life. I want to mention we have our 21-day habit reset challenge that is happening April 1st. In 21 days, we're going to dig in deep. I'm going to help people pick one of those habits that they want to change, and we're going to go deep on that habit and completely reset it. It's going to be ridiculous. We're going to go live for 21 days straight. Sophie's going to get mad at me on the weekends, but it is what it is. Just coaching, everyday tips to go through so that by the end of those 21 days, your life has changed. You have more control of your life. And it's exactly, you'll hear it in here. People who are successful, people who I see who feel like they have their shit together, I'll say, have these rituals in place that hold it there. And she has it. She has many of those. You have it, Sophie. That's what threw you off so much this last week is you can't do your rituals, so the days feel wrong. And, if we have a relationship tip for this, it's listen to this, because LaRayia talks about giving food and tidings to the homeless. But I want you to think about contribution in the bigger sense. Right. I don't know if you agree with this, Soph, but I feel like, you've been sick and you've been tired and you've had the baby, and it's not like our relationship is perfect. But one of the things that I'm hoping and has felt like a little bit of a shift is that from both of our ends in the last few months, this concept of let's be honest with each other about what we need. Right. From the get-go, without building resentments, without any of that kind of stuff. And then do our best. It's not always perfect, but do our best to give the other person what they need, but also ask for what we need so that we can feel fulfilled, connected, etc. And I want you to think of this tidings and this giving concept in the relationship standpoint, and what would that look like if you showed up to your relationship and said, what can I give my partner to make the relationship better? Absolutely. Yeah, check her out. Lunch on Me. Yep, at Lunch on Me. And if you are in the LA area, start contributing, go buy their stuff so they have more money to give away food. There are not a lot of people that are feeding homeless people healthy, organic, vegan food. It's pretty next level. And they're doing yoga, Reiki. They're bringing all kinds of next level treatment and healing to the homeless. Yeah. Everyone needs it. Everyone deserves it. Really cool. I love it. You guys are going to love it. Did you have anything else you want to say? No, that's it. No? All right. We are good. We'll see you on the flip side. Don't forget to check out the events page because we do have a couple of other things coming up in the relatively near future here. And Soph, do you have a cleanse that is happening? A group cleanse, right? Yeah, we have our spring cleanse on the 25th of March. Awesome. Yeah. So don't forget to go in and engage in that and take care of your body and your mind. See you on the other side. Bye. This episode of the Ignited podcast is brought to you by Philosophy Superfoods. The Philosophy offers cleanses and other nutritional products that are unlike any of the other supplements and detoxification programs on the market. Why? Because they actually nourish the body with whole, live, nutrient-rich foods instead of depriving you and leaving you hungry. Have you ever tried a cleanse only to find out that you can't make it through a whole day because you're starving?
Ever try a superfood shake that made you nauseous because it was so disgusting you'd rather not eat? The Philosophy fixed all that with a simple set of offerings that load up your body with nutrients while actually tasting good. Makes sense, right? Each of the Philosophy superfood and protein blends is vegan, raw, gluten-free, and has absolutely no filler ingredients. With over 15,000 satisfied customers, including some of the world's biggest celebrities like George Clooney, Gerard Butler, Lea Michele, and over 10 years of experience, this is the best stuff you can get. To buy some or find out more info, go to our website, thephilosophy.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back to this episode. We're back to our conversation, and you're gonna want to pause whatever it is you're doing right now and just take a little time to take in the conversation we're about to have. We've got a special guest here today, LaRayia Gaston, and we're gonna share all of your social media handles and all that beautiful stuff. I'll tell the story maybe a little bit later of how I even heard about you, but you know, we talk a lot about the need for service. We talk a lot about the fact that many people get drawn into, obsessed, driven by these external measures of success in our world. And a lot of people that I work with around addiction, a lot of couples that we end up talking to forget that purpose and service are even a part of the equation. I don't think that could be said about you. The only thing I know from the person who introduced us is she said that when you are on one of your food runs, that your home literally has no space in it. You take every space available at your house is meal prep, ground to ceiling, every shelf, everything. So I want you to share with our audience what it is that you do, how you got to this, and then we'll talk about the impact.
Okay, so I started an organization called Lunch on Me, which distributes organic food to the homeless and foster youth. And it started with giving everyone access. I had seen coming to LA from New York, the amount of poverty here was shocking to see how established it is, where it's just a part of the backdrop of LA. And I didn't expect that. Coming here, I would have never thought, you know, the ideas of LA had always been this financial capital where people come and make their dreams come true. And there's just abundance and wealth. But to see that it's separated and there's this scarcity as well, it was shocking. I felt like I needed to do something about it.
When was that?
This happened 5 years ago.
Okay.
But I had been feeding for 15 years. So this is a part of my tithing.
So you were doing that in New York as well?
Yes.
Okay.
I've done it in any city that I've ever visited, any country I've ever been. That was my form of tithing. Growing up in the church, though I'm not necessarily specific to one religion, but I definitely feel very spiritual. And the most important lesson I ever learned growing up in the church was tithing, which is doing your part, giving back. And I have been doing that since I was 14. That's the first time I had ever fed someone. And
can I ask a question? Because
yes.
I always want to get to why. What was it at 14? I mean, you heard the message of tidings.
Yes.
What was the thing? What was the situation that had you go, I've got to help that person?
So my mother was super into the church. I wasn't, even as a teenager, but I would go to church to spend time with her. That was kind of like my place where I would tell her, like, I don't really want to be here, but I want to be with you, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, wow.
And we always had that kind of conversation. Like, our dialogue was very, very open, to be honest, about whatever we felt. And being a rebellious teen, I was like, I don't want to be here. So one day I had told her before, my uncle owned a restaurant. And the first day I had fed someone, I was clearing out the shelves, all the food, doing inventory. And literally, as I'm grabbing all this food that there was nothing wrong with, but we have to throw away because of policy, a man was outside of the restaurant digging in a trash can. I was 14 and I was just like, hey, sir, I have all this food. Would you like some? It was just like my first, it wasn't deep. It was just this, I felt like I was literally in such a
it made no
position
sense.
that I'm like, wait a minute, you know? And then at 14, I hadn't really heard about homelessness. It wasn't something that had been talked about, where I didn't have a fear of homeless people or all these like ideas that are put into young kids' heads, right? Like most of the stuff that we believe in, it's been, introduced to us at some point. And I was so young, there was no opinion formed around it. I just saw I was a man.
So you just got to act.
Yeah. And I was like, hey.
That guy needs food. I have food.
And I'm throwing this, it's going in the trash right now, and there's no reason.
Totally.
So long story short, I end up packing up the food, I'd given it to this man. The most woo-woo moment happened ever. And I always say that because it took me a long time to be comfortable talking about what happened, but I had given him the food. I forgot to give him a drink. I went to grab a drink. I turn around. The man is completely gone. The food's in his cart and he's nowhere to be found and there's nowhere he could have went. And it was just this weird moment at 14 where I'm like, what just happened? It was bizarre, but it planted a seed in me where I was like, wait, I can just give food to people. So I started like hiding food. And when my uncle would leave, because he found out maybe a year later that I was doing this, and he was like, I will get shut down. Like he was upset because he was like, you can't do that. And in my head, it's like,
it doesn't make
I don't understand. I'm 14. I don't understand policy. I don't understand all that. I'm just like, we're going to throw this away. What's wrong with it? And he's like,
plus how fucked up the policy is, right?
Yes. I mean,
someone's just actually hungry and it's going in the trash.
Yeah. And I was kind of stubborn in my ways. So I was just like, when you leave, you won't know what happened. So I just kind of let it go. I didn't say anything. And so I just built these relationships where people would come. Like there was just like clockwork. When my uncle would leave, people would come. I would give them food.
You were known as the woman who gives food.
Yeah,
well,
the word
girl,
spread.
I guess, at that point,
and then
14.
people would help. Like there would be people that would help sweep, like just help us like contributing at night when I would be there. And so it started with there. I'd done it for 3 years. And the most ironic thing now looking back, I know that it was for whatever reason a divine moment that I was put into. Like it planted a seed in me. And the last day I was at my uncle's restaurant, like literally quitting at 17, the first man I saw was walking down the street.
No way.
And I had never seen him before again.
Wow.
Even in that moment, I didn't think anything of it. I was just like, wait, that's the guy that never took my food. And that's all I thought. And he just waved at me. And it was just like, now when I look at it, I'm like, he was an angel.
Yeah.
Like you can't tell me that he wasn't an angel.
Yeah.
Like that man, he came to do that one moment.
100%.
And I had moments like that within
See, I'm glad I asked
the time.
about the first experience.
Yeah, but I had
That's
no
amazing.
idea. So 3 years go in, I tell my mom, I don't want to tithe anymore in church because I was always trained, whatever money you have, you put 10% aside and you distribute it to the church, wherever you go. And I was like, I don't want to do this. I was like, but I really like feeding people. And that's when I told my mom what I had been doing. And she was like, I don't care what you do, just do your part. And that's what she told me. And that changed my world forever because I'd also gotten this permission that tithing didn't have to always happen in the church. It could happen outside of that.
Sorry, I don't even know what tithing is. Is that basically donating?
Yeah. So basically in religious, whether Christian,
organized religion,
Judaism, you're 10% of whatever you make is not yours.
Wow. Okay.
It's to distribute, which to me is the most valuable thing.
It's like it's your way of giving back.
Yes,
as expected.
but it's it's planted.
Yeah.
Within your practice that it's no longer a practice; it's innate.
Yeah.
You know the 10% of everything you have, and it kind of redirects your idea of what giving is.
Yeah.
And your relationship with money
And possessions.
because you don't look at it that way. You look at it, that 10%
It's
not
not
mine.
like it's not like, hey,
It goes-
can you donate some of your money? It's rather, here's the part of the stuff I made that I'm supposed to give away.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's a part of tithing.
Yeah.
And which means 10% tithing. So when my mother explained to me at such a young age, like I could do whatever, that's what I first started doing. I would take 10% of all my money and I would buy food for people. I would like invite people to restaurants. Like that was kind of my way of tithing. And as time went on, I had done that and I really started to love it. But I done it for 10 years. The only person who knew was my mother because it wasn't about.
Well, and all the people you fed.
Yeah, all the people I fed,
Like
but they just thought it was like a random, act.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't even at that moment building relationships. I was just tithing. And there was no reason for me to talk to people about it because that was my tithing. That was my way to contribute to society. And it wasn't for like a pat on the back. It was because that was my spiritual practice. And after 10 years, one of my friends had asked me, I was in Los Angeles for Thanksgiving and I didn't want to go to anyone's house because anytime there was a holiday, I would cook food. If I wasn't with my mom, I would cook food. I grew up in the kitchen, always cooking. I'm the oldest of 8 kids. So it's like I'm used to making food. And so I wouldn't want to go to anyone's house. I would just want to make food and distribute anywhere I could find people to give it to. And one of my friends had asked if I could help her grandmother cook. And I was like, I really want to cook for the homeless, but I will, help. So she was like, well, what are you doing? I was like, honestly, I like feeding the homeless. That's kind of my tithing. She's like, I'll come help you if you'll come and help my grandmother afterwards.
That's
So
awesome.
it was like the first person. I was like, okay. And then so she came over. We made all this food. Her name's Megan. Made all this food, handed it out, and she was like, oh my God, that was the best thing that ever happened. And it was my first time. I didn't even think of it because it was my first time It was the first time I had ever invited someone to join me. And basically after we had fed, she was like, when are we doing this again? And I'm like, what? Like, it was a weird thing because I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think about other people's interests in that. It was just kind of my private thing. So went to her grandmother's house, made food. It was great. And she was like, let's do it again. Let's do it for Christmas. And so then we were like, okay, we can invite friends. That was when she was like, let's have some of the people in our circle come out and help. And so I started doing that with friends and I was like, oh my God, they like to do this too. And it got to a point where like in our group text messages, people were going out to eat with people and taking pictures and telling me their stories. And then I realized like, oh my God, people are making human connections too with people, which you don't really hear about that.
Well, on both sides, people are making connections with other people who want to help and making connections with people who need help.
Oh, absolutely. And it's just such a divide, you know, people, it's very, very segregated. So to see that, it was really refreshing where I was like, oh, okay, people like this. So my friends were like, can we do more? Let's go into the nonprofit world. Let's see if we can volunteer. Because I was just doing this on my own. I've been doing this for years. And then I was like, okay, I'll look up nonprofits. All of us decided to go into the nonprofit world and I hated it. It was the worst experiences I ever had. I'm talking about like I had left places crying by how people were treated. And I wasn't used to that because I always like, first of all, I never had bad experiences. I've been doing this for 15 years and I can count on one hand experiences that weren't that great. But I mean, out of 15 years and thousands of people, it was so rare.
And that's the fear, right? A lot of people say, well, I don't want to do that because maybe I'm not safe or who knows who you meet. And that gets back to all the stigma. Because, you know, if you're homeless, you got to be crazy. Why else would you be homeless? You must be crazy or lazy or a psychopath or there's all that stuff. And so even the people who want to help, what I'm hearing in your message is they stay away from helping because they're scared. So the fear keeps them out. And what you're saying is I've had thousands and thousands of interactions and like 3 times something was off.
Yeah. And even those times, I've never been in danger. The worst things I've seen have been when cops have been violent towards homeless people. And I've seen, you know, I have seen guns, but it wasn't the people that were out there. It was them not treating mental illness properly.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and just kind of being trigger happy and things like that. I have seen but I've never had one person who's homeless like hurt me or do anything. And so in different cities, different countries, like it's been the same thing. I've always had loving interactions. So when I went into the nonprofit world, I was so hurt by how people were treated. It was disturbing to me because I didn't know anything about the nonprofit world. I was never in that. I just always directly worked with people. And so basically the straw that broke the camel's back was a really huge nonprofit, had just received $10 million. And they had said that it wasn't in their budget to do a drug program graduation, which was only $2,500. And I basically explained to them at first, mind you, I'm not even in the nonprofit world, but I'm like, you can't take away the one thing that people are looking forward to. Like life is hard to do sober. And you've taken people who've worked a year to be celebrated. And then you're going to take away their celebration. Like it's kind of like art programs in schools.
Right.
They're devalued. And in the nonprofit world where there was abundance and there was money, they still didn't put their clients in mind. And in that moment, I was like, well, how much is it going to cost? And they were like $2,500. I was like, me and my friends will pay for it. And that's when I decided, I was like, you can't take that away. And so long story short, we end up 48 hours, we raised the money. We made all the food for their graduation celebration. I'm there and I'm crying the whole time because it was the first time. Every time I tell the story, I get choked up because it was the first time I had seen why it's so bad. Because all of these nonprofits, all these organizations, they're really not doing their part and they're not doing what they're saying. And it's not about the people, it's a job. And when it's about money, God leaves the room. And that's what I believe. And I've been in so many rooms where there wasn't that light involved because it wasn't about that. And it's because of the people are the ones that are affected by it, you know? And that's why I'm such an advocate about it, because these are people who don't have a voice. And I have to deal with all of the mistreatment, the stigmas that's keeping us from loving people. So in that moment, I was crying as I was serving food and we had made all this food and everyone was like, oh my God, we never had such great food. And that's when I had realized too, oh, we just made food that we eat. Like I didn't think to give them, I just made stuff that I cook at home. And then that's when I realized like, oh my God, like they're giving them I mean, they're giving them things that they wouldn't eat. And I didn't really know that because I had always just went to restaurants with people. I just always had shared what I had. So I'd never really seen this like dogmatic approach to like people in poverty and that type of thing.
I mean, if you think about it, there's an industry for that. There's the people who make that food and they make it probably not. I mean, I've been in jail. It's probably not that far from jail food. Like,
it's the same
like
thing.
Volume. It's like a volume game. You got to just feed a bunch of people. So
price.
Somebody just
keep the price low.
Yeah, keep the price low because we have admin costs or whatever that is.
But what makes it crazy is they invoice about $70,000 a inmate. So if you even look at the divide of that, it's $70,000. Average person doesn't make that. So again, this is greed. This isn't even about them saving money. It's about them not caring. No.
When you're in jail, it's definitely clear that it's not about saving money. It's partially about dehumanizing you and like they can give you something better than a cold bologna sandwich. That's not that's not the goal. The goal is just there's another organization. Like you're in a jail and then there's another company and that company sells them food. That company's purpose, if they're public for sure, but even if they're private, is to make the food for as little while providing whatever nutrients are supposed to be in that thing for the minimal entry level, these people must have these nutrients to survive kind of food product, and then distribute it. And you said it's not about the people. I think it could even go worse than it's not about the people, and it's rather the people are like the animals that must consume the food in the end. Otherwise, there's no company.
Yeah.
Like, well, they just need to be able to eat it.
Yeah.
As long as they can consume it and not die from it, we're good.
Yeah, and that's really hard it's hard to understand that even on an energetic level. The energy that's put into that is just like a lot because it affects us all. Yep. And for me, being in that situation, I literally made an impulsive decision. And I remember I was scooping food, crying. Everyone was so happy that we did that. And they had this huge building, 7 stories, and half of the stories aren't even occupied with people. They just, it was just such a waste, And in that moment, I remember saying, I don't know, excuse my language, but I was like, can I go to the show?
Oh, you can swear.
I was just like, I don't know shit about the nonprofit world, but I know how to love people, and that's all that matters. And that was the moment I said, I will never go to another nonprofit, because every time I had went to one, this is the same type of experience I had. And I can't go into places just like trying to dismantle what they have built. I need to just create my own.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, everything I'm going to do, the base of it's love. Period. Because this isn't the type of experience I've had. This isn't the experience my friends have had. I've brought them into. This is not it. Like, this is not it. This is why people volunteer and they're not sure what just happened, because there's no love, there's no connection. And so I called my friends and I was like, we're never doing that again. And they're like, well, what are you going to do? I was like, we're starting our own. And they're like, what? I was like, I don't know. I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, what are we going to do? And I literally threw out numbers. I was like, let's feed 500 people. And they were like, okay. And then they're like, what are we going to feed them? And I'm like, cold pressed juice and vegan pizza. Like, that's all I could think of in that moment.
Amazing.
Because I was like, you know what? I would like this.
They deserve
and
the best.
I was like, I would like this. And so I was just like, let's do it. So literally, and that event was off of my hurt and rage at what I had seen and how people were treated, that literally graduated a drug program. Like, that was such a big deal.
That was supposed to be the celebration, was the shitty, non-existent food
They were going
to
cut their celebration. We brought all the food. They didn't even give us chafing dishes. All they gave us was like old apple cider. They're like, this is what we're supplying. I'm like, you're a multi-million. They're one of the biggest nonprofits in downtown LA. One of the biggest. Every single person probably listening knows them, and I won't say their name, but it's huge.
Yeah.
And it's like, you cannot be doing, like, this is people's lives, It's like, I know that you're the founder and you're rolling up in a Tesla, but you're only in that because this man is without needs.
Which is, by the way, fucked up by itself.
And that's what happens.
Anyway,
you have no idea, like, the things I have seen, Skid Row events, like what I've seen and been exposed to, where it's just like, it's people. So we did our event, and the first event we did,
this is the vegan pizza,
cold pressed juice.
Love it.
That's all I could come up with. I was like, I guess this is what we're gonna feed. This seems like, and I'm like calling companies, trying to barter with them, because like at the first event, I wasn't thinking about donations. I was just thinking like tiding. Like, I never had this weird thing with money. I'm just like, we're going to pay for it. But I was like calling pizza places, like, can you guys give us a discount? Like, I was literally trying to barter, like, hey, we're trying to feed up 500 people. This is how much money we have. Like, what can we do? We're doing this for Skid Row. I
love it.
And so that's what I had
bet
done.
People showed up, right? Like, when you show up with that message,
I was thrown off.
Some people,
how many people showed up.
I mean, Sophie taught me this. If there's one thing you taught me in life more than anything else is, what was that?
I don't know. Like
Sophie just did a move. Is that you got to ask. You got to ask the question, because I think at the core, I'm a firm believer that people are good. Even the people who run that nonprofit, even the people who drive in that Tesla, even the people who run the company that throws cold bologna sandwiches at our core, people are good. It's just the perspective that they look at the world through that is so skewed compared to ours. And so, you're calling a pizza place and saying, I'm trying to feed 500 homeless people. This is how much money we got. I guarantee the person on the other line is like, I want to make this work. I don't know if I can, but I want to.
Yeah.
And to me, that's why I was so excited about having a conversation like this is, it is about relationships. And this is our relationship to everybody around us.
Yeah.
You don't know what somebody else's pain is. You just don't. There are people, there are 3 apartments. We live in a townhouse there's 3 apartments here, and people living in the studio, and we're 4 blocks down. When I when I used to sell drugs for a living, 4 blocks down, I used to live off of Cadillac, which is super close.
Of course, you lived on Cadillac if you're a drug dealer.
Right on Cadillac.
Perfect name.
And the people who live in these homes don't really know what happens 4 blocks down. If anything, they try not to go down that street so they don't have to see what happens. And
we had someone move in the townhouse next to us because there were homeless people going through our garbage, which to me is they're collecting recyclables, they're getting glass bottles, they're being thrifty and smart, and they're not just sitting there wasting, they're actually trying to do something to better themselves. And she got so upset. She started yelling at me and my sister. She was pregnant at the time. She's like, you're just going to let your kids roam the streets with homeless people out here? I was like, they're not doing anything. They're not dangerous. And she moved from this street because it was so dangerous. And to me, it would never occur to me that that's a danger.
But plus, the catch-22, it's like homeless people are lazy, they're crazy, they don't do anything, they're unmotivated, and then when they go out and finally find a way to make some money,
then they're dangerous.
Then now all of a sudden you make them dangerous. It's it's literally they're not allowed to win.
And that's hard work. And I say that because I went and recycled at 5 a.m. With some of the people from Skid Row. I stayed in a tent for 43 days recently, and to have a better understanding.
Yeah.
And that was the most work I've ever done. First of all, homeless people are the only ones recycling. Let's be real. I don't care how green you think you are.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, most people are not recycling.
Yeah.
They're the only ones I see at the recycle yards,
Wow. Yeah.
And so anytime I see them, I'm like, yes, I'll save stuff for them.
Same.
And it's exposure too. It's if you don't want to look or have an understanding of something, you're going to be ignorant to
Exactly.
it.
And that's why she moved.
But you have to understand where your ignorance is.
Yeah.
But it's
so that it can be, your perception can be expanded.
Right. But that example of the neighbor is a good example. It's when you see a person in front of you and they're obviously struggling, to have the automatic response of how do I defend myself because of what that person can screw up in my universe is a really skewed perspective. And I don't think she's not doing that on purpose. It got somehow along the way, this got indoctrinated into her.
Absolutely.
Got to be careful. You can never trust. And, it's just the messaging was that of be careful, protect yourself.
It's also context. And it's I'm not very religious, but it's God, universe presents in front of you what you're needing and what you need to see in lessons.
Yes.
And she's from New York City. Girl has seen some homeless people.
Yeah.
But on our block, in a different perspective in Los Angeles, there aren't supposed to be homeless people going through our trash cans here in her mind.
If you live on Park Ave and you're one of those valet homes, and you walk out to your car, again, right? We protect the same people that we deal with, couples that deal with problems or people that deal with addiction issues. A lot of us try to run away from the pain. So to not see that kind of stuff, we'll do whatever we have to. We'll put our hands up when the homeless person comes up to you and like just literally to not see it because it affects us.
Yeah. But that's the problem. And I think that's so self-absorbed
100%.
because it's like, I tell people all the time, it's hard for you to look where it hurts. Imagine the person that's actually going through it. Imagine the person you're scared to look at. Imagine their life. And that's a big issue. And that's been for me, accountability is we all should be doing our part. And 90% of the people I'm in front of, whether it's podcasts, whether it's doing speeches, like none of them are doing their part. And they're the ones that can make the impact.
Yeah. And
so that's a hard one for me because I am in this wellness world, very, very heavy. And yet no one, everyone's namaste in this moment, because I always talk about like, okay, there's this whole like elitist concept that these are the black sheep, but the highest of the high. And yet they're not doing, like, those are the ones that could shift and create such change.
Yeah.
But we have to create practices and understanding. And the first understanding should never be about the judgment of homelessness, but what happened to you to get you here? Because that's so painful to me. Is like when I see it, all I think of is you don't have one person in your corner because one person has a couch to sleep on. And so when I see that, I'm like, they're in that situation because there's been no one there. And for how long? We don't think about that. Foster kids, 50% of foster kids in LA will be homeless, aging out of the system. There's 28,000 kids in LA. Only 1,400 are awaiting adoption.
I mean, the woman who introduced me to your work I met her through an organization called Stepping Forward LA, and it's all about kids who age out. And when I first met them, there's so much shit that we take for granted. We just take it for granted. Like you said, having at least one person to call when you're in trouble, right? But to be somebody who was fostered, first of all, which means you got abandoned in one way.
You're a homeless baby.
You first had to be abandoned as a child. And then you see other kids around you and they get taken up. They get accepted. Other homes take them. They disappear and you never see them again. You never hear from those kids again. They're in regular homes. And you stay and you stay. And then you cross some threshold where nobody's ever going to grab you. And you know it. Because you're only with the other kids that nobody's ever grabbed. And I don't know if it's at 11 or 12 or 13, but at some point you cross a threshold. And then the sick thing about it that I never knew until I got involved with this organization is 18 is the mark. And you want to talk about systems. Like you hit 18, it doesn't matter that you have nothing. They go, here's your bag with stuff, whatever stuff you still have. Good luck. And
with no tools.
There's no real job training. There's nothing. And it's like when the messaging your entire life was you're worthless, because that's the message you get. The message you get when nobody's ever wanted you is you're worthless. To then be on your own. And then for us to pass judgment like they're lazy, stupid, it doesn't matter it doesn't even matter what the judgment is, but anything that goes after that. I tell people that I work with all the time and they're not that abandoned, but we all do our best all the time. Like the only reason that person is in the situation that they're in is because they were strong enough to make it to that place. If I was abandoned from the moment I was born till the age of 18 and then left on the street, I'd probably be dead. That's probably the only reality that would exist for me. It takes real strength. I mean, you said
to suffer well.
To suffer and make it.
To suffer well. And that's why I think it's hard for me, is because when I see people who've been through so much and be so kind and gracious, suffer well, it's so humbling, because you can go to a Starbucks and you want to watch someone not suffer well, get their latte wrong. You'll see someone not suffer well. Be a little late, have a car jump in front of you and not let you in. Those are people who can't suffer well. But then you have someone who's gone their whole day, no food, no recognition, and then you come up to them and they're still gracious to you and still have a mustard seed of hope that you might be kind to them, even though they've had interactions with multiple humans being judgmental and just hurtful. Like some of the things I've seen, it takes so much to stay so grounded. And it's only because I watch them suffer well. And those are the people that I literally are my role models. I look at them and every day I think like I don't have problems. I check myself because these are people who are trying so hard. It's like they were born in a hole. I always say like life starts in this race and everyone, a lot of people feel that we all have the same start, but these are people who are starting like sea level deep in a hole, and you're telling them to get out. You're telling them to love themselves. It's like we hold the same exact regard for our lives and our privileges that have been given to us, because 90% of people who are successful have been given handouts. That's just the truth of life, whether it's a job you didn't deserve,
Oh, yeah.
whether it's a family is a handout, a family that loves you is a handout because not everyone gets that.
Your parents driving you to your fucking job.
Or driving you, helping you with your resume.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, or getting hired
of
from
it.
a friend's company. Like,
Absolutely.
again, these are handouts, right? It's like someone doesn't want to give a homeless man $1, but do you want to take stock of your own privileges and see how many you've graciously, grabbed, accepted, and thought it was all because of you? So in my head, it's always like access. It's access. It's if you give these people an opportunity, they will surpass us because they're already suffering
Just
well.
fucking kindness.
Yeah.
If you just give them kindness,
Oh my God.
that's the first handout, right? Just
Love,
just
see them.
treat them like a normal human being.
Oh my God. And that's been the biggest thing is like people don't want to have to ask you for things. Like that is very hard and humiliating every single day. They don't want to ask. They have so much pride to be able to pay for things. I've been in situations where homeless people are like, I got my food stamps today. Can I buy you lunch? And it's like, no, but there's just this pride of like, I can finally do something for you. So they take stock of what you do. It means so much. And it's the little things.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a water bottle and a granola bar. It doesn't seem like much, but people remember that because so many people have disregarded them. Those micro gestures are huge. And it's like, if we thought of those things, if we thought of like, imagine being in that space, a lot of us have stability, have family, and still don't have self-love. But we expect them to, but they have to be reminded, like no one's loved them. Like you said, in foster care, the kids I have to deal with, and it's hard because right now when I leave here, I'm going to a 5 and 6 year old that are homeless and that live in a dirt yard in Silver Lake, right across from the 365 Whole Foods grocery store. It's like I have kids that are literally hiding in nooks with moms that are not going to have anything, that are literally young, 5 and 6, and you want them to have this love that where does it come from? Where they try and get enrolled in school and the schools are kicking them out because they're homeless. They're not even giving them a chance. It's like the system has there's no regard, the system. I always tell people it's like, it's so important that we do our part because the system is functioning like it was designed to function. It's actually surpassing their expectations. So we have to stop looking at the system. That's never it's running how it's supposed to.
Yeah.
It's completely breaking people in two. What we need to do is, as a society, micro gestures, being kind to each other and intentionally putting ourselves in that space, being gracious. And when I look at these kids, that's literally like what we're doing next. It's like, I have kids that I'm like, trying to get them before they slip through the cracks, before they're 10 years old, before they're 18, and you tell them it's their fault. And I'm seeing them at 5 years old, 6 years old with no access to anything. And so it's hard because we have all these ideas that they're dangerous, all these things. And I tell people all the time, like, get out of your own way. Have a direct experience so you can have a real understanding. And if you had a bad experience, please check the energy you brought to the environment. Because if you have tried it one time and you've had a bad experience, did you have a condescending approach? Like there's a lot of things, like we have to take accountability of our own energy and perception. Like if you're going to give and you think you're better than the person you're giving, you're not in the position to give. You have to check yourself to understand how big of a blessing it is to be in a space to have abundance, which is more than you need to share. Even if it's like a granola bar and water, that's abundance.
Yeah.
Third world country conditions are happening in LA, and some people don't have that. Some people can't buy a water bottle because they're living off $3 a day because that's the maximum you can get for food stamps. So if you think about that, even though we don't think of $1 water bottle as a lot, when that's one meal for you, that's a lot. And again, just because it's far removed from your reality doesn't mean that's not a huge 58,000 people in LA that are dealing with that type of reality. And being gracious and kind. And there's so many ways that we can contribute, but it starts with taking away that judgment, taking away the idea. If you come up with the concepts of all the reasons why you can't help or be loving, that's part of the issue.
So when you started this, you left nonprofit, you wanted to start figuring out how to do your own thing.
Yeah.
You gave people vegan pizza and cold-pressed juice.
Yes.
And your first goal was 500 people.
Yeah.
How long ago was it when you left?
When it started?
When you left the nonprofit kind of stuff and started your own thing.
So that happened 4 years ago. Okay. And because I had given the nonprofit thing a go for like a year and a half, and I was just hitting my head against the wall. And so, I started with 500, and it was one of these weird, crazy things where the first event, about 130, 40 people showed up to volunteer. And I was thrown off because I was like, we're just giving out pizza and cold pressed juice. Like, I don't even have anything for people to do other than that. And it was so big because I'd already been feeding people in Skid Row. I would go out there. That was my tiding. So they were so excited. And my first event, when I saw it, I was overwhelmed about the support because then I realized like you said, there is a nature of people that want to do good. And I had created a space for them to come and do good.
Yep.
So that was overwhelming when I'm like, oh my God, so many people. And then we fed 500 people. And then, so I was just like thrown off because I was like, oh wow, this like really worked. Small. This really worked, right? And then the next thing that everyone said was, when's the next one? And I hadn't even thought of that yet because I'm like, I was just trying to get through this one. And then that's when I realized there's work to be done because the same 500 people I fed that day will be hungry tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so that's when I realized like this is dedication. So I was like, okay, I picked a date. I'm like a month out. So I'm like, okay, let's try and do this once a month. So my goal when I started, and I thought what felt like success to me was 500 people a month to be able to feed that many people. Because there was a time where I couldn't feed myself. So to be able to do that was like already huge.
Yeah.
And so within a year and a half, we went from 500 meals a month to 10,000. And it happened literally in like 16 months.
Damn.
So talk about like understanding what abundance could look like. I was thrown off because I had no idea. I had created this space and then I created a void too because my concept was completely opposite of most nonprofits because I was focused on organic food, perishables, things that people don't want to deal with because they don't want any extra work. It's work for them. And for me, it was like, I want to give people access. There's so many people in wheelchairs because they're diabetic. People look at, it's like, they don't think about that. It's like all of these people in wheelchairs are not war vets. Like these are people with diabetes and the food that they're given in the food banks and the shelters are
perpetuating that
110%. And so when I thought about like people with disabilities, I'm like, they can't afford to gain weight because if they have cerebral palsy, like you can't afford to gain weight and they need access. So I kept thinking like, oh my God, let's combat health. Let's introduce this. And so when I first started on Skid Row, they called us the lettuce girls because they were like, they'd never seen so much salad.
Yeah.
You know, like that demographic, if they have a salad, it's like iceberg. They're not used to, this is the first time they've ever had greens. It's like, I mean, and it's a whole nother world when you think about it, where it's like people are still living without electricity. They don't have iPhones. Like these are like people are still literally reading the newspaper for news, even though it's just like, you know, a mile from, you know, you cross Los Angeles and it's a whole different world.
Oh, it's not even a mile. Sometimes it's a block.
Yeah.
Like downtown
and it's
is just a block.
Whole nother world.
Yeah.
So it was great because the first thing I had done was introduce health. And I explained to them because I knew it was something different. I was starting to explain to them why this was important to eat. You know, and that was kind of the conversation of like, you guys are feeding us like rabbits. So they didn't understand it because they had never seen it. And then I was explaining to them, well, this is good for this is good for that. And then I was bringing cold pressed juice. You know, I was competing against like Snapples and Arizona teas, like, you know, things that are cheap that they can get.
And sweet. And so it feeds into that sugar kick.
Yeah. So we started juicing a lot of apples. It was like when I started, I was, the first company I worked with was Juice Served Here.
Okay.
And they were the first company to give us 10,000 juices at once.
Amazing.
And
wow.
And when I asked them, I requested, I was like, can I have like watermelon, pineapple, like really sweet stuff? I was like, and then add a little bit of green stuff to it so that they can get used to it. And that was like the first company that started. And that's when we started doing food drive-bys because I was like, how am I going to get out 10,000 on foot, like drinks? And I'm like, we're going to start filling up cars. I'm like, okay. So then I created this program, Food Drive-Bys, where like cold pressed juice companies would come, and we called it Food Drive-Bys because cops would follow us, like we were doing like we
doing
were
something wrong.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, so they're realizing we're like slowing down and then handing out juices quick. So they're like, they're Food Drive-Bys because that's what's happening. Like the salad girls, the lettuce girls are handing out all this nutrient dense things, random things,
Love it.
to the city, but then they started to like it. You started to see a difference where within a couple months, people were saying like, oh my God, I have more energy now. And then I realized, oh my God, these are people who have never lived life with a quality life and they've never felt what it feels like for your body to work like properly, for you to have all the nutrients that you need. And all these things I had learned as time it went on. And I just had these realizations like, oh my God, because it's not my world. I didn't come from that. I always ate healthy. I always did certain things, you know. I became vegan at 19. So it was like, I grew up with a hippie aunt at 12 years old. I'm cold pressed juice. She was like super into anything like holistic, very, very young. So it was a part of my world. And I was like, oh my God, this is something that they're interested in. And that's when I realized that I have something here. And then I started finding out about food waste because I'm like, okay, how are we going to scale this? Because I'm literally fundraising to make the money now. Now we're throwing events. We're trying to like figure out we're selling merchandise. Like we're finding ways to to feed more people. And then I started looking and I realized 40% of food in America is wasted. It never hits the table, especially in grocery stores. So first company, it was weird because when I did this, like the first company I went to was Lassen's. It's like this small grocery store that's in LA because the family still owns it. And they're the first ones I went to. And I'm like, hey, where's your guys' food go? And I realized every grocery store was throwing it right outside. Like this new wasting is new. I was the first like nonprofit to do it outside of a church that would go pick up pastries and stuff. All of the food, Whole Food, Trader Joe's, trash. So I was like, okay, if we figured out like how can we partner?
And they throw away like if it has a bruise on it.
Yeah. So
and then obviously if it's expired by a day.
But not even just expired. People don't realize like seasonally.
Right.
So you can't get anything pumpkin spice after Thanksgiving.
Horrible.
All of it's pulled from the shelves and thrown away.
Horrible.
Nothing's wrong with it. It won't expire for another year.
Wow.
They don't keep it. Cranberry, stuffing, anything you think.
Even just because the value of the shelf is so high for them that they will just eliminate anything.
They just
that's
throw it away.
The need is no longer there.
No, because it's all consumerism. It's all about like food trends and what. But the thing is, the way our grocery stores work is you never see a shelf empty.
Yeah.
Right. So they would rather order more and throw it away so that it always looks pristine than to just be sold out.
Horrible.
And so it's and then also when you do a hot bar. So we were getting like the food from the hot bar. They make the food every 4 hours. So even if a food tray is empty 10 minutes before they close, they make a whole new batch and they throw it away 10 minutes later just to keep it full. So we were getting, the scale of the amount of food 6 nights a week. And so when we first started getting food and doing our food drive-bys, we were feeding from midnight to 2 a.m. for an entire year.
Because you had to wait till after the stores closed.
Yeah, so because our first relationship, we had to do whatever they said.
Exactly.
And it was like, we close at 11, you have to be here at 11:05. And so we're like, okay, we'll figure it out. There. We'll do it. And so we were just creating all these ways.
It's less work than raising $5,000-$10,000 to be able to buy that food.
Yeah.
And it's better. Again, relationships, right?
Yeah.
It's better for everybody. Because instead of, if you went and bought it, you would still go buy food and then they would still throw that food out. Even if you had the money.
It's more sustainable.
Yeah, to an extent till you realize how much stuff you have to buy. Like, there's so many other things. When we first started, we were at $5 a plate, which was huge for us. Where we were like, oh my God, $5, 3-course, all organic meal with a drink. Now we're at 89 cents. Because I've been able to recoup 70%. So we're at 89 cents with all eco-friendly products.
That's
so everything that we use is environmental
Just for everybody who's listening right now and you're waiting, I guarantee there are people listening right now like, what the fuck do I do? Like, how do I help?
Yeah.
Like, just like at your events, are like, okay, when's the next one? So we're going to have a link because you guys do collect your own version of tidings.
Yes.
Right, from people.
Yes.
Who can just every month just be on auto renew or
they
something.
They can pledge, yeah. So that's one way our tiding starts as low as $10 a month. And that's one way that helps us sustain. We're not government funded. We've never received a grant. Everything has been literally from supporters, from grassroots, literally people wanting to jump aboard and help us. That's one way to help us. Even buying our merch. That's big for us. Like buying our shirt, our slogan is love without reason. And I think that's so important just to remind us on a regular day, like when we're going out into society and especially people in your neighborhood, I tell every single person, especially if you're in LA, every grocery store, gas station, you will see someone homeless.
Yeah.
Carry granola bars in your car, just water bottles, something that simple, and go up to someone and say, here, I thought about you. It's that simple.
And it's so great to get kids involved. We get so much, I'm a food blogger, so I get so much stuff sent here. Now I'm way less wasteful about it. I'm like, I don't send it to me unless we're going to have a collaboration because we don't want just stuff and we don't want to waste anything. But regardless, we always have food here because I love food. And we keep things in the car for the kids. And we have a certain spot every day when we're coming home from school. The kids know there's some homeless people standing there. They hand it out to them. Not money, food, snacks, water, bars, like something that can actually serve them in that moment. And they're so grateful and they look forward to us and always like smile at Kai and Leo in the back seat and they love it. Like if I forget, Leo will get so mad, my 6-year-old. He's heartbroken because he can feel the connection. He sees, he looks in their eyes. I have him hand the food to them from the back seat. It's that connection. We've been doing it 2.5 years. And when we lived in the Valley, we had a friend who was this homeless guy. I would ride around in my bike cart with Kai and Leo in the back of the cart in the Valley. And he had his dog. in the valley, and he'd ride around, and we'd go to the same park, and we'd go to the same grocery store, and every time we'd like give him a gift card from the grocery store or whatever we could do to help. And he was so kind, and he was our friend.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, it's all about building relationships within our communities. Like, I feel like with this whole tech world and all the things that are happening, we're disconnecting from our neighbors.
Yeah.
And even though someone doesn't have a house, they're still our neighbors. Like, we're all coexisting together.
Yep.
Exactly.
And I think it's important micro gestures so that anything we practice becomes a habit, and practice habits become innate.
Yep.
So you get to a place where you don't have to think about being kind to someone because it's in you, where every time you see someone at a grocery store, you always think, and I tell people all the time, like, a lot of us, we probably throw away 30% of the food in our fridge, you know, and that's being gracious. But it's like, imagine if you would have just given someone something out of your cart, an apple that day. That apple went bad. You know, it's just the idea of sharing, and it changes you in so many ways. And it's such, you'll see, like, you'll get such kind responses because you're coming from that heart place, and people love it. I always, I work with, I don't know if you guys know Ta, she owns, Den Meditation Lounge.
Yeah.
But now she carries like water bottles in her car and granola bars, and her and her daughter, she's like, everywhere we go, like, we're feeding people, and she's seeing how much of an impact it makes, and it's such a micro gesture.
Yep.
It's something that doesn't require much time, but the domino effect, you'll go somewhere, and there's places where I've been all over the city where someone's like, I don't know if you remember me, but we went to eat here, and everyone remembers.
Yeah.
It's the craziest thing. I've been chased out in my car.
Well, that's because a lot of people aren't doing it.
Yeah.
Oh
So
my
you
God,
stand
it's
out from that 2 years ago, you know?
And it's so humbling.
Plus,
because,
if anybody saw your hair,
yeah, my hair's always super
not like-
crazy.
it's not exactly easy to miss you. So
Yes.
like, I will recognize you for the rest of my life wherever we
Oh
see.
my God, it's crazy. I have people like chase me down.
That's awesome.
And I love it because there's just such love
That's the
built
connection too,
between
though, right?
so many strangers. And I know that really does plant seeds, and it shifts things. And if we all did that, I tell people all the time, like, okay, we would love for you guys to tithe. Please tithe with us. Let us be one of your charities of choice. But also, if all of us, I always ask anyone that listens to any podcast, anything I've been on, just dedicate one day out of the month to social good. Get your families involved. One day, you're talking about 12 days out of a 365-day year.
Yeah.
And just make that a part of your everyday living, because that shifts so much, even in your family. When we throw our block parties, we have all ages. The youngest volunteer we had on Skid Row was 3 years old. Zara, and she did all the forks. Yeah, and she was just ready for it.
I would love to know. So I volunteer once a month at Project Angel Food, which is amazing. But my kids can't go because it's a commercial kitchen. What is a good way for parents that live in a city like, let's just say LA, something that kids can do to get involved?
We do our block parties. So what's cool about it is all of our kids run our juice bars. So they run all the drinks for everyone that's sitting in our block parties. And that's what we love too.
And how often do you do that?
Once a month.
Okay.
So that's been a big thing for us, where it's always on a Saturday, and we try and make it early, like from 10 to 4. And that's a place where it's literally, we made that block party for families to be able to come,
That's
where
great.
kids have a place, because we always do it indoors in a space.
Great.
And we do like yoga, introduction, breath work, and then the kids come out and they help. And it's cool because it's become like a social gathering for like the kids, because they're all meeting each other.
Totally.
And it's a cool place for them to meet, where they're learning about just like helping. And then we have kids that come that are homeless as well. So it's like they're working with them,
good.
foster kid, where it's just like, it's just this cool community space where people can work together. Our next event is the 16th, which is this is our 3rd year doing a self-love Valentine's Day event.
Nice.
And so that's what
we'll
doing.
try and come. Bring our
I mean,
kids.
we'll have links to everything. We'll start collaborating and like getting involved ourselves as well. I was going to say this at the end, but in case I forget, I'm going to say it right now. You know, you said this before, and so I'm going to present a challenge for everybody listening, and that is, we all know this needs to happen. You're listening right now. You've thought about it before. You know, you've seen a telethon for something. You've sat there and like somebody told you, hey, you really need to help more. If you're serious, and I mean this 100%, like if you're serious about making your relationship at home better, making yourself feel more satisfied at work, feeling like you serve more of a purpose in the world, or being happier when you wake up, like honestly, to some extent, you can even forget the people you serve. I don't think you should, but you can even forget the people you serve and do this from a selfish point of view. If you start contributing to other people's lives and make that part of the purpose of why you exist, period, point blank, doesn't matter what population, doesn't matter where they live, you make helping part of your day to day, I guarantee your life will get better.
Yep.
Oh, absolutely. I always tell people, because I've seen a lot of these gratitude journals, I always say that gratitude is a byproduct of service. You cannot get it without, because I feel like it's our human
and joy.
Like it's a part of us.
If you need to get out of your own way, if you're depressed, if you're sad,
oh, absolutely.
If you're
go help somebody else.
Going through a struggle, go help someone else. Be selfless.
And especially seeing people who really need, and they look forward to us. That's the thing, is people don't realize that when you're homeless and you're not used to like having conversations with people, being seen, you've actually been conditioned to believe that you're invisible, and to be seen, it is the interaction, how powerful it is and how shifting it is on both ends, because even you being that kind, loving person can help them forgive the people that hurt them so many times.
Yeah.
So it
give them hope.
You
Just give them
change, like it changes you. And I tell people all the time, come have one day with us. It is the most life altering thing, because you're going into a whole new world and you're seeing like people who just are literally praying to have moments like that where they're seen and loved. And everything we do, the core of like Lunch on Me is just literally about love, and all of us getting to a space where we're even more loving. We're always challenging ourselves to be more loving, to be more patient, to be more kind. And this is a space that you can practice at, because you learn to be completely of service. And it's, oh my God, it fills your cup up. You feel like you're going to just like explode.
Yeah,
you do. It's so
I love
great.
it. I love it so much. Like I said, we're going to get involved, but also like my challenge to you guys, just go out and just do it. There's going to be links in the show notes. Just look for something. If it's $10 a month, or if it's buying a shirt or whatever it is, just do something
Get
right
involved.
now. Like before you go into work, whenever you're listening to this right now, just go get involved on some level.
So we would not like to cut this short. And this is not cutting it short. We could talk to you forever about this, but you need to go out there and do your work.
Yes.
You can see that 6-year-old and
oh my God,
7-year-old,
5 and 6-year-olds.
5 and 6. Ugh. We always ask our listeners 5 questions. I mean, our guests, not our listeners. What is the best advice that you've ever received?
When my mother told me, I don't care what you do, just do your part.
Yeah.
I believe in that so much, because it planted a seed that every day, my everyday walk is about giving and being of service. If you're not doing that, what is life for?
Holla.
Okay. We're gonna stop on that one for that. I don't know if you'll have an easy time or a hard time picking one of these up, but what is your proudest moment to date?
Ooh, my proudest moment is when I was able to get someone off Skid Row. His name is Kevin. It was someone that I had fed for a year. He became clean. He's now a chef. And he showed back up to Lunch on Me to volunteer. That's when I knew like our work was full.
Wow, that's full circle.
Yeah. And so to me, that was one of my proudest moments, to see a man I had served put on gloves and help us.
Wow.
Because not only did he get back on his feet, but he remembered the most important thing, which was love and to give back as well.
And remember where he came from.
Yes.
And the fact that none of that would have been possible had you guys not shown up in the first place.
Yeah, it made those midnight to 2 a.m. nights for a year worth it. It made me realize, like, I wasn't crazy, that what I was doing was necessary and it was needed.
It made a huge impact.
Yeah, that meant something.
What about your hardest moment?
My hardest moment is when there's so many people who don't have the culture of giving within them, and I'm in spaces and I'm trying to explain to them why it's so important to get out of their way. It's difficult when people are led by fear and you're telling them to just move over on the other side, that there's something great there. That's when it's difficult, because you want to jump for everyone. You want everyone to get to that space, and you have to be patient, and you have to, even in those moments, you have to learn how to be understanding. And it's a labor of love. And so in those moments when I'm having to labor love, it's easy to love someone who's lovable.
Yep.
It's very hard to show up and love someone who is making you work very hard. Yeah. So those moments are hard, because I also have to reset and remind myself that everyone's where they're at. And even in those spaces, I have to still be understanding and judgment free.
Yeah.
So
and what a beautiful memory, or what a beautiful way to allow your perspective to align with the people you work with who deal with that all the time.
Yeah, I'm always trying to, it's easy to side with people who are homeless and going through it and are easily lovable. And then you look at society and people who don't help, who can do so much and won't. So I had to learn, I have to love everyone.
That's
and
so
that
hard.
was the challenge is I can't pick one or the other,
Yeah.
but say, because if not, I'm not practicing what I preach.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it was so important that even
I'm not that evolved. I'm not that evolved yet. I'm so angry with those people.
And you know what? I had to stop being angry and find ways to help
them see.
because anger won't get into their heart.
Right.
But
Well, it'll actually
grace
just
will.
prove it'll in their mind it'll prove to them that they're right.
Yeah, and I don't, and that's what I had to learn too is I don't want to add any more anger to the world
No.
because I've seen it do so much,
Yeah.
and it's easy to get to that space. But and even like yelling, right? Like I want to be radical and be like but then I just learned like the most important thing is that to maintain that calmness is so powerful, and that was a lot. And it took me. I learned that this year. It took me this year to really embody it and like the concept really clicked.
The shift,
Why it was so important to be peaceful and kind and to love things right.
You can coach me on that.
Okay.
What about your self-care rituals?
Well, you talked about the
Yeah.
fact that you became vegan at a pretty early age. And so obviously taking care of yourself in terms of nutrition is part of it. But you work hard. I mean, you guys talked about doing these everywhere, all over the place, and it's not easy. I mean, you were doing things up until midnight or until 11 p.m. when you had to go pick up the food and then go package it and then drop it off and all that. So how do you take care of yourself on a day-to-day basis to make sure that you can show up at your best?
Well, I had to reset. This is something I learned within the last year and a half because I lost my mom a year and a half ago. So during this time, I labored through it with doing the work. I buried myself. Where I couldn't even energetically like think about that. So I had to reset. First of all, I had to just selflessly pour all of my energy into that so that I could get to a space of healing. And then I had to create disciplines, get back to the start. Like I had to go full circle. I had to go through that morning, go through that where completely neglected myself because I wasn't even ready to break. Because lunch on me would have broke and I needed it to stay together.
Yeah.
So now my disciplines, first of all, start with how I go to sleep and how I wake up, which for me, it's I have to talk to my mom. Like before I go to sleep, before I wake up, set my intention for the day. And I like to overcome my challenges before they present themselves. So in the morning when I wake up, I explain to myself in every situation, like I'm going to be the bigger person. I'm going to not get frustrated. Like I tell myself before my day starts, because every day is about putting out lots of fires.
Sure.
So I always tell myself, and then I thank myself where I've gotten, and I remind myself all the places I prayed for that I'm now in. So I don't lose sight of that because it's so easy to be within something
and to want something bigger and better and bigger and better.
Oh
and
my
it's
God!
Like, I prayed for this
and I took
life.
that away.
Yeah.
I feel like losing my mom. I lost. It wasn't. I still have goals, but the difference is I'm enough where I'm at.
Yeah.
And you learn that, right? So I definitely I've created that type of space where every day I just ask the divine to stay connected with me and to have me go where I'll go and say what I'll say to whom. And that's my focus now. My focus is no longer on a bigger picture because I think my purpose is bigger than I can perceive.
Yeah.
Because I can feel it. So I stopped making ideas of what my life would be and I surrendered to allowing it to flow.
Love it.
And that's been my everyday. And then to reset. And it's accountability. And if there's any moment that I felt, especially when dealing with challenges, because everything is a challenge every day, it's always, there's 100 ways to deal with one thing. Which one did I choose and was it the highest form? So that's what I've been focused on.
Beautiful.
And then at night I go back into everything I did and I tell myself like tomorrow, what's a better way to deal with something? And it's, oh my God, it has shifted so much. And then also giving myself permission to take time. Like my thing is like, I love Latin cardio. I like the gym. Like, and for the last year I didn't get to do that. And now I've given myself spaces to take care of myself where I'm like, okay, every day I get an hour of working out. And I didn't do it because I was just so focused on that nurturing as a woman, like just taking care of fix it projects. And then I was like, no, but like, what about yourself? And I said that to myself because during that year and a half was the most unhealthy I'd ever been because of stress and the pain and loss. So I had to like reset everything and say, you know what? every day, give yourself an hour. And so my hour is the gym. No one can hear from me because I'm in Latin cardio for an hour.
Right.
And that's the place that I feel better.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like I've given myself from 7 to 8. Like that's it.
And
I'm
then
like,
you can all those times throughout the day, like where you maybe would have responded from like a 6 response. Now you're responding from an 8.5 or a 9,
Oh my
or
God,
maybe
it feels
even
so
a
much
10.
better.
And
Yeah.
then that just comes out and that flows through you
Yeah.
without as much effort. And there's not as many resentments. You're just in it.
Absolutely. And I took away the expectations.
Yeah.
Like I reminded myself, like, because a lot of times we are so goal oriented. We want all these things now, but we're not celebrating ourselves from what we've done.
Yeah.
I love that.
And I have celebrated the fact that like, every day you are being loving to someone, like a day doesn't go by without me touching someone I've never met or like everywhere I go.
Yeah.
And it's a practice. Like I always tell myself, okay, if I go in the elevator, I'm finding someone to compliment. I'm finding
100%.
someone to be like loving.
I connect in a
That's
human.
great.
I put my phone down whenever I walk on the street. Whenever I'm looking, someone passes me, I'm like, "Have a good morning."
Yeah,
like,
and
I'm
it
that
feels
person.
good.
It feels so good.
So good.
Yeah.
And so that's
a practice.
That's my
It's a practice.
my ritual every day is
Love
that
it.
love and again to focus on being higher in spaces because it's easy to get to a lower vibration.
Yep.
And I don't want to be a part of that. So
Wow. So we talked about this a lot today, and this podcast is called Ignited, and we always ask people, what is it that ignites you? I think we talked about that a lot, but if you had to summarize that, the core of all of this that ignites you.
I think what ignites me is the possibility that there can be a universal shift if we get enough people energetically participating. And what ignites me is that I'm here because there's work to be done, therefore I would not be here. And I'm able to be a part of that because I've intentionally put myself in the space of service. So that ignites me, the fact that on an energetic level, I'm participating in an earth shift in a big way.
I love it.
And so that for me is like, oof, I can feel it.
Yeah.
I can feel it.
And then it all comes together, and all those 100 and some people that showed up the first time to
Oh my
volunteer.
God.
And
We
the
move
hundreds of people
mountains.
since.
Like we move mountains working together, just what we're able to do. And the biggest part is like to be in a space where now we have to like cap it at 150 volunteers because we're like, we can't take, people want to like come and volunteer and to be able to create that and to have touched so many lives, it's insane. It's insane to think that happens not just by working at it every day. If I'm meeting someone new every single day, you're talking about 200-300 people every year and how that accumulates by just being kind.
Yeah.
And people remember kindness because you never know what someone's going through. And that day could be the day that they're just like that one straw that broke the camel's back where they want to give up. And then you're graciously the person that turned it all around.
Yep.
So amazing. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for showing up here and sharing
you.
your love and your message. And it is my sincere hope that like 20-30% of the people listening to this right now contribute and join this battle, and we get to create that shift you were talking about.
Yes. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you everybody so much for listening. I'm sure you're either crying or sitting outside of your work and haven't gone in yet. So go on in, get on with the rest of your day, meet that challenge, and let's make that shift happen. Thank you all. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Thank you everybody for listening to the Ignited podcast. We were so happy to have you along for this ride. Please go and subscribe to this. Leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want more, don't forget to go to ignited.com, where all the podcast episodes are available with show notes and so many of the little details and links from each one of these interviews. And you can look at all the future events that we have going on, all the things that make Ignited so special, even beyond this recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.